This first part of this video is about roots. Whether we're propagating cuttings or waking up bare root stalks so that we can graft to them. Making more citrus trees from a single one. Growing new trees from seed. This is mango. Overwintering root stalks. This is a scorpion pepper. It's doing extremely well. It was pruned back just a couple weeks ago. Bringing things back from the dead when you stick them in the soil too soon and the air roots die back. Root health in plants is the main thing that I've noticed when growing anything. The roots are basically all that matters. Whether you are able, if you're trying to coax them to grow on a cutting so that you get a nice success rate and you're actually able to propagate that, or whether you have a plant that you had come in the mail and it was in the mail too long and didn't have sunlight, and you're bringing it back from the dead. See that green growth poking out on the sides of the little branches? That's a cocoa tree. This is the other one that came a little bit on time but is also dying back a bit. But it's got new fresh growth coming out too right here on the trunk. Roots are everything. Rooting cuttings for citrus. More cuttings that are rooting. Growing dragon fruit in a zone that they're not normally meant to grow in. I'm in zone 8B, and I have all these dragon fruit that I grow. These are actually every single one of these I got last year, even this really big one. Some of them might fruit this year, at least this one might. The rest of them for sure next year will fruit, once I get them in their proper containers and trellised up properly. Root health is everything. Most plants, even though the roots are in the soil, they have what are called aerial roots. So what it is if you take a plant out of the pot and you pull it out, you'll notice there's usually two separate types of roots on the bottom of that plant. There's the roots that are, the thick, kind of meaty, darker colored. They're still white normally, but they're sometimes a yellowish color, and they're usually more round. Sometimes they can be shiny, but they're usually just a matte kind of whitish color. Those are your water roots. Sometimes they can turn yellow. They usually are the first to die when something happens to the roots. This is a Java ice cream banana cup that I got recently. So the water roots are usually going to be the first thing to start telling you that there's a problem with your plant. But the air roots are what's going to die first. So when water roots start to have an issue, whether it's nutrients that the plant can't pull from the soil, or it's drying out so the plant begins to wilt, your water roots are what's going to tell you that, I'm having an issue, please help me. The aerial roots are going to be how your plant kind of like gets its strength, its more vigor, so that if your plant has a lot more aerial roots, it's going to look super deep green and lush and happy, and all that foliage is going to look like it's just on fire like this. It's just beautiful foliage, all smooth and looks like it's fake almost. That's because the aerial roots are able to pull out some things like the nitrogen out of the air and some of the nutrients out of the soil that are just all around it. Water roots are sucking up the other bits, like the nitrogen in the soil and the bits from the compost, all those chemicals. So that the water roots do chemical and the aerial roots do gases, okay? There's nutrients all around us in the air that you just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Air has mass. There are nutrients in the air. That's how orchids live, and many other plants like them, the monstera, many of these house plants, the philodendron salome, they don't even need a pot. You could set that outside the soil and it will survive. It will have some roots that go into the ground, yes, but it will also survive with its aerial roots, pulling nutrients and moisture out of the air if it's in the proper environment. So really, when you're talking about taking care of a plant, what really matters is being able to take care of its roots. Like these coffee plants, for instance. I was seriously overwatering them and not giving them the proper fertilization and nutrients a little while back, and a lot of them were having some issues. This one's still recovering. They just wilted, their leaves were turning yellow, they were not happy. When I learned a little more about them and I started to remedy that behavior, as you can see, some of them are recovering quite nicely. This one's starting to recover as well. Still wilting on the top sets of leaves, but that lower set is standing right back up. And occasionally I find with things like coffee plants or my cocoa plants, or even sometimes a dragon fruit or even a citrus plant, if there's something going wrong, like if I'm watering the thing and the water is not fixing it and causing new growth like this, like it should be happening, then I stop watering for a whole week, 7 days straight. I let that soil dry out, because obviously the watering is doing something wrong, whether it's causing root rot, maybe my soil's too old and it's just holding the water there and just drowning those roots. Maybe my soil has no nutrients left, and maybe it's just like starving everything of nutrients. I don't know, but I know that there's something with that soil, so I'm going to let it dry out. Then when it's dry out, I'm going to have a look at it. Like if the plant's been in there a number of years and I know it's got roots to the edges, I'll pull the whole plant out of the pot and I'll have a look at everything under there and see the condition of the soil, the condition of the roots. Are the roots nice and healthy looking? Do they look like some of them are rotted because of standing water that's been on the bottom? Do they look like that the soil is super light in color, like a light brown instead of that deep, rich, full of nutrient color that it should be? So that's the problem. See how light brown that is? It's missing all the nutrients. Same with this. I had to add this blood meal back in there to bring some of that richness back to the soil. It's been sucked and drained for years of growing food and fruiting things, strawberries so yeah, I'll pull a plant out, check out the roots. You know, if the plant is small like this mango tree, dig around a little, feel around in that soil. How does the soil feel? Does it feel loose and happy? Is it compact and clay-like? You know, if it's compact and clay-like, you got an issue, my friend. You know, pull that sucker out of there and dig it around. I'm getting ready to pull this guy out of his pot soon, because it doesn't seem to matter what I do. These leaves are coming out so misshapen. That's telling me that there's definitely a root issue. Well, I just repotted this a couple months ago, so if there's a root issue, that means that my soil has a problem. So I'm going to pull that plant out once it's dry, and I'm going to redo it. I'm going to put new, fresh, rich soil in there, pot her back up, and see if I can fix it a little bit. Because every one of those leaves should be coming out beautiful, nice and standing up pretty and round. This one just needs a little bit of fertilizer, but this is how they should look. Big and full and round. It shouldn't be all misshapen and funky like that. This guy's another good example. This is the rooted cutting from this plant. I cut a couple pieces off, and this is one of the ones that's doing really well. I just repotted it in here yesterday and saw how big the roots are. They're not super huge, but it's got quite a few nice good sized roots. That's why the foliage is looking so good. So the main thing is, you know, being able to care for the roots. These are some new dragon fruits I got in the mail the other day, I think, or last week. They all came with roots on them, so I just potted them right up. They had old dry roots and old dry soil. The person that sent them, you know, he just left them dry. It's fine with me. Dragon fruit are easy to root, so I just potted them right up, and you can see this red edge right here. That usually means, when they're turning reddish like that, means that they're growing on the dragon fruit. Same with most other cactuses, like a Christmas cactus or a Thanksgiving cactus. If you look at the very edges of new growth, or even brand new growth in general, it's usually red colored if it's coming out nicely and healthily. And then it turns green after it gets out. Like some of my dragon fruit here, they're starting to push out new growth because I topped them and brought them back in for recovery. I stuck them outside a little too soon, and they started to have some rot issues from the soil being wet too much. And now they're recovering. Same with that guy back there. You gotta let the soil dry out sometimes, especially with a cactus. Oh, one of my protectors here. I garden completely organically. No pesticides, no nothing. So these are my pesticides. That spider, he eats all the slugs and bugs that come around that I don't want to have in here. There's some beautiful jumping spiders around here somewhere. Some beautiful black and gray ones. There, can't find them now. Here's some more vigorous new growth coming out of a cactus that I just brought in. And right here too, it's all red at the tip because it's growing vigorously. This is almost doubled in size overnight. These guys grow extremely fast if you keep them in the proper temperatures and you keep grow lights over the top of them, or just like I have them in a greenhouse. I do have grow lights, but they only turn on for a couple of hours at nighttime now because that's all we need them for. So moving on to the next part, talking about roots. You know, if you do have that root problem coming on, maybe your plant is having some root rot. So if you're having a lot of root rot issues and it's because you're either overwatering or your soil is compact, you need to loosen it up. If it is the soil's compact, loosen it up. Put in some perlite, fresh compost. Get some fresh nitrogen fertilizer, you know, or some high nitrogen content fertilizer you can make for yourself would be like a tea. Get a bunch of leafy greens, or, you know, pull leaves off of a couple of trees and grind them up a little bit, cut them into pieces, and then soak them in a jar of water for 5 days. You know, burp the jar every day, and you make yourself like a kombucha tea, but for your plants, and that is going to be loaded with nitrogen. No, it doesn't last long, so you'll have to do it, you know, probably weekly or so if you want to have good growth. But that's the kind of stuff you got to do to take care of these plants, man. To properly care for any plant, you have to be able to care for its roots. Most people, everyone that I talk to, they say, "What's wrong with my plant?" Well, it's not the plant necessarily, it's the roots, and this is what it is that you got to do. You know, if it's not overwatering that someone's doing, then it's usually along the lines of you know, they're just not fertilizing it at all. That's usually what it is. They have never fertilized their plant because they just didn't know that they needed to fertilize it. And I usually put it to them this way: well, you get hungry after a while, don't you? Well, yes. Well, every animal, pet that you can think of on Earth gets hungry after a while, doesn't it? Well, yes. Okay, so then in that logic, since plants are alive, they too will probably in some way get hungry after a while. And it's not always just fertilizer that's needed. There are a whole array of micronutrients. What we think of like nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, those are called macronutrients, large, big. Those are the big main things. But there's a lot other small amounts of things that plants need, just like we do, like, you know, calcium, magnesium, manganese. Plants need selenium. They need all kinds of stuff like that so that they can build their cellular structures properly and get fat, vigorous growth that's going to survive a little bit of a whack or a knock or a little bit of extra rain, so, you know, it's not going to cause it to rot and fall off. It'll be able to recover and send out more vigorous growth. You have to take a look at what you're doing to the plant and what is the environment you're keeping that plant in. Are you giving it what it's supposed to have, the nutrients, the loose soil if it needs it? Some plants like compact soil. Some plants like soil that's completely nutrient free. Like, they like arid soil. Some cacti love it. All the plants that I grow, they need these nutrients. Banana trees, they suck a ton of nitrogen. Mango trees, citrus trees, a ton of nitrogen. Same with the dragon fruit cactus. They use a ton of nitrogen. Not much water, no, but they soak up a ton of nutrients to keep this growth vigorous and fat and not thin and skinny like that. There's a huge difference in thickness right there, and you can see it, I'm sure. Things like that, you know, the light makes a little bit of a difference, but it's the nutrients, the root health, that type of stuff that's really going to matter. If you have a plant that's struggling and it's just not growing the way that you like this guy's having some issue, just go up, top it. Pull that new growth that's on the top off of there. That doesn't want to come off very easily, but I'm going to trim it real quick. There. Trim that top off of there. And now what that's going to do is not only is the plant going to send out new growth to the sides, but it's going to send nutrients back to the roots. It's going to rebuild its root structure a little better. That's what we want. When we're having plant issues, it's a root issue. The leaves on this mango started turning a little bit yellow because it needed nitrogen. These guys are doing great. They're looking beautiful. They were purple when they were growing up, and now they're turning their green that they're supposed to. Same with these guys. I overwatered this thing a whole bunch before I knew that mango trees don't even need that much water. They just need more nutrients. My crack key tomato. Gave them all the nutrients and water that it needs for most of its grow life now. We're just letting her grow. Turn it so it leans towards the sun. Even like these orange, this is a Dwarf Tangerine, and so is this. I received them both in the mail, and they had been in the mail for 2 weeks straight. And they do look very dead. But I had a similar thing last year happen, and same with these cocoa plants, where I keep taking care of them and keep those roots alive, because the roots are still alive. There's plenty of life in these root balls and these things. Just keep taking care of them and they'll send out new growth. It just takes a little bit of time is all. Just have that patience. Give them the nutrients and the love that they need. That's all it is. A little bit of love. Everybody just needs a little bit of love. Anyways, that's basically all I've got about roots. And if you found this video educational or interesting, please like, share, and subscribe it with your friends. You help my channel out a lot. And just try to educate people on how to take care of their plants and how to fruit things in general. I love being able to grow basically everything that I've ever brought to me. I didn't know that I was such a green thumb until the last few years, really. But anyways, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Have a great day.